Disclaimer: this story is a work of fiction inspired by real emotions and situations. Any resemblance to actual persons or events is purely coincidental. The story is intended for mature readers and explores complex themes such as infidelity and emotional vulnerability. He could barely catch his breath. His heart raced like a drum pounding a frantic rhythm in his chest. Today was the day he had been dreading and anticipating all at once. The day he would cross a line he'd never crossed before, his first time being intimate with someone he wasn't in a committed relationship with. For him, this wasn't just a physical act, it was a milestone charged with so much emotion, fear, and expectation that he felt like his entire world might tip over. He paced his small apartment, running through all the scenarios in his mind. What if he froze? What if he didn't know what to do? What if she thought he was a fool? The nerves gnawed at him. Despite everything, there was a spark of excitement, a fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, this moment would be different, special even. He wasn't a guy who had a long list of conquests or wild stories. No, this was uncharted territory. He was careful, thoughtful, the kind of man who felt deeply before acting. And now, he was about to meet her, a woman he barely knew but whose invitation had set his heart on fire. It wasn't just the physical aspect, it was the vulnerability that scared him most. He checked his phone again, no new messages. She'd told him to come over around 8 p.m., no pressure, just to hang out. But he knew it was more than that. The way she texted, the way her tone hinted at something undisclosed, it was like a secret waiting to be revealed. His mind drifted back to how they met. A casual chat at a friend's party, laughter shared over inside jokes, the subtle touch of her hand that sent shivers down his spine. He'd admired her from a distance at first, never daring to imagine this could go beyond friendship or simple acquaintance. But when she asked him out, just the two of them, his chest tightened with a mix of hope and fear. Could this really be happening? Was he ready? The nervous energy that surged through him was almost overwhelming. He looked at himself in the mirror, dark hair tousled, eyes wide but determined. "You've got this," he whispered to his reflection, trying to convince himself more than anything. Outside, the evening shadows lengthened, and with every passing minute, his anticipation grew. He tried to focus on small tasks, tidying up the place, selecting a playlist, anything to keep his mind from spiraling into panic. But deep down, he knew the truth. He wasn't just nervous because of the physical act. He was nervous because this was a step into a new world, one where trust, feelings, and perhaps heartbreak could all intertwine. And despite the uncertainty, there was something magnetic about her, something that pulled him toward the unknown. As the clock ticked closer to the moment, he realized this wasn't just about the first time. It was about stepping out of his comfort zone, about risking something he didn't quite understand yet. He took a deep breath, grabbed his jacket, and headed out the door, heart pounding louder than ever. The night was young, and everything was about to change, but he never imagined just how unexpected that change would be. The evening air was crisp as he walked toward her apartment, the city lights flickering like tiny stars guiding his way. Every step felt heavier with anticipation. He kept running through the messages she had sent earlier that day. There was something different about the way she invited him, almost casual, yet underneath it all, a tension he couldn't quite place. When he arrived, she was already there, waiting by the door with that effortless smile that both calmed and unsettled him. "Hey," she said softly, her eyes sparkling with something he couldn't name. "I'm glad you came." Her voice was warm but carried a hint of mystery, as if she was hiding a secret she wasn't ready to share just yet. She stepped aside, letting him in, and the familiar scent of her place, vanilla and something woodsy, wrapped around him like a comforting blanket. Despite his nerves, he felt a flicker of ease. They sat down in the cozy living room, the dim lighting casting gentle shadows on her face. She poured 2 glasses of wine and handed one to him, her fingers brushing his briefly. The small contact sent an unexpected jolt through him. He realized this wasn't just a casual hangout. There was an unspoken understanding simmering beneath their polite conversation. "So," she said, leaning back on the couch, "I'm glad you're nervous. It means you care." Her tone was teasing but sincere. "First times are always tricky. But I promise, I'm not here to judge." He swallowed hard, feeling a mix of relief and anxiety. Her openness made him want to relax, but the weight of the moment still pressed down on his chest. As they talked, she shared stories about her past, some funny, some tinged with regret. He listened intently, realizing this woman was more complex than he'd imagined. She wasn't just a mysterious figure who'd invited him over on a whim. She had layers, experiences, and emotions that made her human. Then, without warning, she paused and looked directly at him. "I want to be honest with you," she said softly. "There's something you should know before anything else happens." His heart skipped a beat. He braced himself, wondering what truth she was about to reveal. "I'm involved with someone else," she admitted, her voice steady but vulnerable. "I don't want to hurt you, but I can't lie about that." The confession hit him like a cold wave. Confusion, disappointment, and a strange sense of disbelief swirled inside him. Why had she invited him here then? What did this mean for him, for them? She reached out, her hand covering his. "I don't expect you to understand right away. I just needed to be honest because you deserve that." His mind raced, but amid the turmoil, he found himself drawn to her honesty. Despite the shock, there was something genuine in her eyes that made him want to stay, to listen, to understand. The invitation had been unexpected, but now he saw it wasn't about casual fun or an easy night. It was about something more complicated, more real even if painful. He nodded slowly, unsure of what to say but knowing that whatever happened next, this night would change everything. When he finally sat across from her, the room felt smaller, charged with an electric energy neither of them could fully explain. The nervousness that had wrapped itself tightly around his chest earlier began to settle into something more tangible, anticipation mixed with vulnerability. This was the moment he had imagined countless times but now had to live through. She smiled gently, noticing the tension in his hands, the slight tremble in his voice when he spoke. "You don't have to pretend you're not nervous," she said quietly, reaching across the small table to squeeze his fingers. "It's okay." Her reassurance was like a lifeline. He exhaled slowly, feeling a bit more grounded. They had only known each other briefly, but in this small apartment filled with warm light and soft music playing in the background, there was an unexpected intimacy. They talked, really talked, about everything and nothing. He shared his fears, his inexperience, the heavy weight of expectations he carried. She listened without judgment, her eyes kind and patient. She told him about her own doubts, the scars she carried from past relationships, and the complicated choices she'd made. As the conversation unfolded, he realized this wasn't just about the physical first time he'd been so anxious about. It was about connection, trust, and honesty. This was deeper than he had expected. Then came a moment when words weren't enough. Their eyes met, and something shifted. The nervous energy melted into something softer, more electric. She leaned closer, her breath warm against his cheek. The world outside the window faded away as their faces drew nearer. He felt a flutter of excitement and fear, the thrill of vulnerability mingling with the unknown. She placed her hand gently on his cheek, and for the first time that night, he allowed himself to relax fully into the moment. Their first touch was tentative, exploratory. Neither rushed. Every glance, every sigh, was a silent conversation. He was nervous but determined not just to get through the night, but to truly be present with her. Despite the earlier confession of her involvement with someone else, in this space between them, it felt like just the two of them existed. The night stretched before them, full of possibility and unspoken promises. Yet beneath the tenderness, a faint shadow lingered in his mind. The truth she had shared was never far away. He couldn't ignore it, but for now, he chose to focus on the fragile connection blossoming in front of him. Their hands intertwined, breaths mingling, he realized this first meeting was more than just a step into physical intimacy. It was a journey into understanding himself and what he truly wanted, even if the path was uncertain. The night had only just begun, and with every heartbeat, he moved closer to a truth he never saw coming. The room had grown quieter, the weight of the night settling around them like a soft blanket. Their earlier conversation had broken down walls, allowing them to glimpse each other's vulnerabilities. Now, something deeper was stirring beneath the surface, something that neither of them was quite ready to voice, yet it demanded to be heard. He took a shaky breath, gathering courage from the calmness in her eyes. "There's something I need to tell you," he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm scared. Not just because it's my first time, but because I don't know what this means." She nodded slowly, her expression patient and understanding. "It's okay," she said gently. "I want you to be honest with me." He hesitated, then finally let the words tumble out. "I've never done this before. Not like this. I've always been careful, waiting for the right person, but with you, I felt something different. And now, I'm afraid it won't be enough. That I'll mess this up or that you won't want me after tonight." Her hand found his again, squeezing it with quiet reassurance. "You don't have to worry about that," she said. "Nobody expects perfection. What matters is being real, being vulnerable. That's what makes it beautiful." Her words struck a chord deep inside him. For the first time that night, he felt seen not as someone fumbling through an unfamiliar experience, but as a person with hopes, fears, and a beating heart. Then, as if compelled by the moment, she leaned in closer and confessed something she hadn't shared before. "I know I told you I'm involved with someone else," she said, her voice tinged with regret. "But I didn't tell you why." He looked at her, silently urging her to continue. "There's a part of me that feels trapped," she explained. "That relationship, it's complicated. I've stayed out of loyalty, fear, and comfort, but it's not where my heart truly is. When I met you, something shifted. For the first time in a long while, I felt alive." Her confession was raw and unexpected. It made him realize how tangled emotions could be, how love, loyalty, and desire don't always follow clear rules. He swallowed the lump in his throat, trying to make sense of it all. Despite the pain her situation caused, he admired her honesty. It made him want to believe in the possibility of something real between them, even if it was messy and uncertain. "Thank you for telling me," he said quietly. "I don't know what the future holds, but I want to try. Not because I expect everything to be perfect, but because I believe we owe it to ourselves to be honest and brave." She smiled softly, a mixture of relief and hope shining in her eyes. "That's all I've ever wanted, to be brave with someone." In that moment, the room no longer felt heavy with doubt. Instead, it shimmered with fragile hope, a promise that despite fear and uncertainty, something genuine could grow. They sat together, hands intertwined, hearts open, ready to face whatever came next. The soft hum of music filled the room, blending with the quiet rhythm of their breathing. The tension that had once gripped him began to dissolve, replaced by a fragile calmness. In the dim light, their faces glowed with an intimacy far deeper than mere physical touch. It was the vulnerability of two souls cautiously reaching out to each other. He hesitated at first, hands trembling slightly as they moved to gently brush her hair away from her face. She leaned into his touch, her eyes soft and encouraging. "Take your time," she whispered. "There's no rush." Her words were a balm to his jittery nerves. He realized this wasn't a test or a performance. It was a shared moment, fragile, imperfect, and entirely real. The fear that had loomed over him now felt distant, replaced by a growing confidence born from connection. As their bodies drew closer, every touch, every glance carried weight. It wasn't about speed or technique, but about presence, being fully there with each other. His heart thudded loudly, but he no longer wanted to run from the feelings flooding him. Her hands traced gentle circles on his back, grounding him. He mirrored her movements, exploring the delicate balance between closeness and respect. The world outside their shared space seemed to disappear, leaving only the soft warmth between them. When their lips finally met, it was tentative at first, a shy exploration that quickly blossomed into something more urgent. The kiss spoke of longing, uncertainty, and the desperate hope that this moment might mean something lasting. Time lost its meaning as they navigated this new territory together. He learned to listen to her breath, her heartbeat, the small sighs of comfort or hesitation. She taught him patience, guiding him gently through the unknown. Despite the earlier revelations, the vulnerability they shared built a fragile bridge between their hearts. It was not perfect, and it was not easy, but it was theirs, raw and honest. When they finally lay back, bodies intertwined, he felt a profound sense of peace. The nervousness that had plagued him before had transformed into a quiet pride. He had faced his fears, shared his truth, and found acceptance. But beneath the calm surface, a small voice whispered reminders of the complexity still waiting beyond the night's embrace, the reality of her situation, the risks of heartbreak. For now, though, they allowed themselves to exist in this bubble of closeness, savoring the beauty of a first time that was more than just physical. It was the beginning of something complicated, yet deeply human. He closed his eyes, holding on to the feeling of being seen, of being held, and of being brave enough to take this step into the unknown. The morning light crept softly through the curtains, casting gentle patterns across the room where they lay tangled together. For a brief moment, the world outside seemed paused, as if time itself was holding its breath. But the fragile peace was about to be broken. She stirred beside him, her face calm but her eyes shadowed with a weight he hadn't fully noticed before. As he looked at her, a sudden unease settled in his chest, a whisper of doubt that grew louder with every passing second. "Can we talk?" she said quietly, pulling the blanket closer around her shoulders. He nodded, sitting up and searching her face for clues. There was hesitation there, something unspoken and urgent. "I haven't been completely honest with you," she admitted, her voice low. "Last night, I told you I was involved with someone else, but I didn't tell you everything." His heart tightened. He had sensed complexity, but this was new. "The truth is," she continued, "I'm still seeing him. We haven't ended things. I invited you here knowing it wasn't simple, knowing I was walking a line between loyalty and desire." He felt a mix of betrayal and confusion, a storm of emotions crashing through him. Why invite him into this mess? Why open a door that led to uncertainty and pain? "I never meant to hurt you," she said, her eyes glistening with tears. "But I was lonely. I needed to feel alive again. And with you, I did." The raw honesty hit him hard. It wasn't the story he wanted to hear, but it was the truth, complicated and messy and real. He looked away, grappling with the ache in his chest. The warmth of last night's closeness now felt tinged with cold reality. "Why tell me this now?" he asked quietly. "Because you deserve to know," she said firmly. "Because I don't want to lie to you or myself. Because whatever happens next, I want it to be based on truth." The twist shattered the fragile bubble they had created. It forced him to confront the reality behind the moment that this night, this connection, was tangled in webs he hadn't fully understood. He felt betrayed, yes, but also strangely grateful. For the first time, the illusion was gone. There was no pretending, no easy answers. The question now was what he would do with this truth. Would he walk away? Would he hold on and hope for more? She reached for his hand again, her grip tentative but sincere. "I don't have all the answers," she whispered. "But I want you to know who I really am, the good and the bad." He looked into her eyes, searching for the courage to decide. This twist was unexpected, but it was also real. And sometimes, reality was more powerful than any fantasy. He sat quietly for a long time, her hand still wrapped around his, though neither of them seemed to notice anymore. The weight of the truth pressed against his chest, not sharp, but heavy like a stone dropped into deep water. He wasn't angry, not in the way he thought he'd be. Instead, he felt something harder to name: sadness, disillusionment, and maybe, underneath it all, clarity. For the first time, he saw things without the haze of desire or idealism. He had come into this night with nerves, expectations, and hope. And while he had shared something real, something raw, he now understood it wasn't enough to build something lasting on. What they had wasn't built on mutual freedom, it had always had a third shadow standing in the corner of the room. Her boyfriend, her emotional entanglement, her unfinished story, they were all part of this too, whether spoken or not. She watched him with cautious eyes, as if afraid he might leave without a word. But he didn't move. He simply let the realization sink in. "I don't regret last night," he said finally, his voice low but clear. "It was honest. Maybe the most honest I've been with anyone in a long time." She nodded, a faint glimmer of relief flashing across her face. "Me too. But I think I misunderstood what this was," he continued, not accusing, just reflecting. "I thought it might be the start of something. Now I realize it was something in between. A moment. Maybe a wake-up call for both of us. Her eyes dropped to their hands. I didn't plan to fall into this. But the moment I saw you, I felt something I couldn't ignore. You reminded me of who I used to be before I settled into comfort, before I lost myself in something that doesn't feed my soul anymore. He nodded. He understood now. She was looking for freedom, for clarity, maybe even for permission to make a change she hadn't yet found the strength for. And in some way, so was he. This night, these choices, had shown him the difference between desire and connection, between infatuation and commitment. He wanted more than stolen nights and complicated truths. He wanted something real, not perfect, but clean and brave and free. She reached up, brushing his cheek with the back of her hand. I don't know what happens next, she whispered. He gently caught her hand and kissed her palm. I do, he said softly. We go our separate ways. Not because this didn't mean something, but because we both deserve to find something that isn't trapped between guilt and longing. Her eyes filled with quiet sorrow, but she nodded. They dressed slowly, the silence between them tender, not bitter. They walked to the door, not with anger, but with the quiet acceptance that some moments are meant to teach, not last. As he stepped out into the morning light, he felt lighter, not unscarred, but changed. He hadn't expected this. But maybe that was the point. The city felt different that morning, not louder, not quieter, just clearer. The kind of clarity that follows a storm, when the sky is raw but honest. He walked with no real destination, just letting the cold air bite his skin as a reminder that he was awake. Alive. Changed. Last night had been a turning point, even if it hadn't ended the way stories were supposed to, at least not the ones we like to tell ourselves. There was no fairy tale. No sweeping declarations. Just two people who met in the middle of their own confusion and tried to make sense of something fragile and real. Later that week, she texted him. I've been thinking about everything. Thank you for listening, for being kind, even when I didn't deserve it. He stared at the screen for a long time, unsure how to respond. What could he say? That he missed her. That part of him still wished things had been different. Instead, he typed back, I hope you find what you're looking for. Truly. And that was it. No dramatic goodbye. No drawn-out closure. Just a simple release of something that had already ended in its own quiet way. Still, she stayed in his thoughts. Not as a regret, but as a lesson. She had taught him that intimacy wasn't just about touch, but truth. That connection without honesty was like a flame without oxygen, it flickers fast, then dies. And he had learned to want more for himself. Not just a moment, but something that could grow in the light instead of hiding in the dark. Weeks passed. He didn't hear from her again, and he didn't expect to. That night remained untouched in his memory, like a page folded at the corner of a book. He could return to it, reflect on it, but he knew not to live in it. One day, while walking past the cafe where they had first talked for hours, he paused. There were new faces inside, new lives unfolding over coffee and cautious smiles. And he smiled too, not with sadness, but with something softer. He wasn't angry at her anymore. Or at himself. Because first times, whether physical, emotional, or somewhere in between, aren't always about beginnings. Sometimes, they're about endings. About understanding where you are so you can figure out where you're meant to go next. The truth was, he had been nervous, terrified, even. But now, he was grateful. That night had peeled something back in him, forced him to look inward, to want better, to feel more. As he turned and walked away, he whispered a goodbye not to her, but to the version of himself who had needed that experience to grow. And just like that, the story wasn't about infidelity anymore. It was about honesty. About awakening. And about how, sometimes, the most unexpected nights lead us right back to ourselves. 8.